This is going to be the most spectacular air show Australia has ever seen.
You won't see anything else like this anywhere in the world.
As far as Warbirds, this is the place to be.
It's a gathering of so many passionate people.
It's great to see so much of Australia's military history here flying in one place.
It's about our history, it's about our culture, and it's a tribute to the veterans.
I'm Kenny Love, Chief Executive of the Temora Aviation Museum, and we're here for Warbirds Downunder 2015. You know, we've been planning this for a long time now. It's nearly 2 years of planning and going into this, and we've got a massive event planned. We've got a huge amount of flying. We've got some fantastic ground displays as well. We've got the museum's aircraft are here, and most of them are going to be flying. Plus, we've got a large number of visiting aircraft as well. So none of this would be possible, you know, without the support of the museum president and founder, David Lowy. And, you know, building the museums was David's dream, it was his vision, and something that he felt very passionate about, very strong about, was to create a place, you know, that the aircraft weren't just put in a hangar and gathered dust, you know, a place where aircraft would fly.
Well, the museum started, I used to come out here, practice competition aerobatics already since 1994. I understood the history of this place and that it was home of number 10 EFTS during World War II, the largest World War II training field for pilots. I had one Warbird, the Dragonfly, and I was thinking about buying another one maybe and starting a bit of a collection. And I'd build a hangar and I'd open it up for the public when they would want to come. And once we built the hangar, I put a couple of aircraft in there, we did a display, and to my surprise about 50 people turned up, and then I thought, well, we better tell them what's going on. And so I ran up to my house, got a guitar amplifier and a microphone, and one of the guys, Peter Anderson, who's very much involved with the museum, started commentating to the crowd. And then it dawned on me that we've really got something special here, and we should take it further. And here we are 15 years later, and this magnificent show today, our third Warbirds Downunder show. We initially started out just displaying airworthy aircraft connected with Australian military history, and then I realised we've got something much more here than just the machines. It's really about the people and about the men and women that served Australia. That this would be a dedication to them as much as it's about flying aircraft. It's a dedication to the servicemen and women who made Australia the great country that it is.
So the lineup this weekend is really, really huge. You know, this is the biggest Warbirds Downunder we've ever put on, the biggest event we've ever put on at Temora. And I think it's the biggest event that has ever happened in Temora. We've had the good fortune, I guess, of having a very supportive council. Temora Shark Council has been fantastic in helping us to make this all happen. And Temora's quite a small town. We don't have a whole lot of hotel rooms or pub rooms, and it very quickly books out. So we looked for other options, and some of those options are a hugely, massively expanded caravan and camping area. And that's not just on the aerodrome, but that's spread over even into a neighbor's paddock. And in addition to that, we have the squadron tent barracks, which is the so-called glamping or the glamorous camping. And that gives people an option if they want to come in and they're not too keen on bringing their own camping gear or pitching their own tent. They can book ahead and just come and move straight into one of these tents, which is already set up and ready to go. The beauty of camping here on the aerodrome, one of the greatest things, is that you're on site. And you know, if there's something flying in the morning, you can stick your head out of your tent or your caravan and be part of the activity and the action.
Hey, I'm Darren Crabb, and I'm the air boss for Warbirds Downunder 2015 here at Temora. I'm going to be the overall air show coordinator for both Friday and Saturday, And in essence, I control all the aircraft movements, ramp control, etc. And what I say goes, really.
And Sabre from Airboss, you're clear to taxi back and we'll bring you in taxiway Delta.
But it's also my main aim to put on a safe professional show for the public and almost the choreography of all the aircraft, because we've got a lot of aircraft to try and pack into a 2.5-hour air show on Friday and 5.5 hours on Saturday.
Warbirds Downunder 2015, first time we're doing a Friday evening program. You know, we've done a lot of flying over the years here in the evening and at dusk, and it's such a special time of the day to fly.
All the aircraft are day visual only, so we have to have everybody landed before it gets dark.
So Saturday's flying program is action-packed. You know, it's 5.5 hours of flying, maybe even a minute or two more.
We've had about a good 2 to 3 week lead up where a lot of us have been working on the program, the timings, what fits in, and everybody are, professional pilots, and so they know what they need to do. And I'm just sort of a bit of the glue holding the whole flying program together.
I'm merely a pilot during the air show. I have no management responsibility. I have no... The show is actually put on by the Temora Historic Flight Club, so my role here is to do my display in the safest possible manner. The fun and passion in aviation is sharing it, and sharing it with people that also are passionate about aviation, whether it's pilots or spectators. Everybody who comes here is passionate about aviation, and that's what it's about.
It's going to be one of those things where people are just going to go, yeah, like we put on a bloody good show. And the big trick is I have as many landings as I have takeoffs.
The biggest program we've done, certainly. And I think if you viewed it and looked at different air displays right around the world, it definitely is a world-class flying display. The Tiger Moth is one of the most, I guess, historically important aircraft in the museum's collection because it was actually based here at number 10 Elementary Flying Training School during World War II. There was 2,500 pilots that were trained right here at Temora, and more than 10,000 personnel. And our Tiger Moth was based here and was a valuable part of training pilots to fly.
Lars Larson, Temora Historic Flight Club Tiger Moth pilot. The DH-82 Tiger Moth behind us is a two-seat training aircraft. Temora was the home of number 10 EFTS, which trained some 2,400 pilots during World War II from May 1941 for approximately 5 years. From flying the two-seat Tiger Moth, they then progressed on to other advanced trainers, except the WWII and so forth, which is also here at the museum. This is the oldest registered Tiger Moth in Australia, 1936. I feel quite privileged to be able to fly this aircraft and strap myself in. this aircraft being one of the 97 aircraft that were based here during World War II. Probably the main reason that I enjoy flying the Tiger Moths is its raw, basic flying skills required. It's seat of your pants. We've got the stick, we've got the rudders, we've got the engine, the wind's in the hair, there's no cockpit you're sitting in, and you really do feel this aircraft in the air. From Monday to Friday, my day job was flying an Airbus A320. It's a fairly sophisticated modern airliner, all fly-by-wire and computers operated. The Tiger Moth is very similar in one way. It is fly-by-wire, that's a physical wire connecting the controls to the flight control services. As a young boy, I always wanted to fly. I built model aircraft, and then finishing school decided I want to learn to fly. Down to the flying school, a couple of jobs, worked my way through, and it's something I still do today. The routine that we're looking for today is the Tiger Moth will be doing a streamer cut. Once the streamer cut's completed, we'll be then joining up with similar era aircraft for a handling display. When we conduct the streamer cut, we throw out a ribbon anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 feet above the ground, then we attempt to cut it multiple times on the way down. It's an interesting exercise of coordination, not only handling the aircraft, but also sighting another obstacle in the air, which is a lot harder than it looks. It certainly hones a lot of skills. Your head's out of the cockpit the whole time. You're not looking inside at all. So your head's around, you're looking, and you really do fly the aircraft and you really feel it quite well.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Warbirds Downunder 2015. Great flying program here today. It's absolutely fantastic. You can see the array of aircraft that we have here, not only from the Temora Aviation Museum, but also from all our friends all over Australia. The aircraft that you've just seen taking off are part of the collection that is basically all privately owned by members of the Antique Aeroplane Association of Australia. Now that Ryan STM is one of the rarest of the vintage and antique aircraft that you can get in the world. Unfortunately, there are very few of these left flying around the world. Australia has a very large collection of them, and many of the ones that are currently flying in the United States actually came out of those aircraft that served with the RAAF.
And Ryan's are going high.
Yeah, roger that, P51, I'll go around.
Yeah, just to backtrack to Echo.
All in all, you see a huge cross-section here of vintage and veteran aircraft that belong to members of the Antique Aeroplane Association. We're very glad that Temora Aviation Museum has this association with this particular group. And again, another very rare Ryan SCW. Fixed undercarriage, 3-seat enclosed cockpit. They only ever built 13 of those. Powered by the Warner Scarab radial, 145 horsepower. It was designed to be mass produced, but unfortunately World War II intervened. The 3 aircraft that you see flying through now in formation are the Cessna 190/195. It was known as the business liner. It's powered by a Jacobs radial engine. Now these aircraft were very desirable aircraft in their day, and equally so now.
So part of the museum's collection here, we have 2 Spitfires. And if you look around the world at any museum, you know, a museum's incredibly lucky, or a collection's incredibly lucky to have a Spitfire, even a static Spitfire. But for us, we have not only 1 but 2 flying Spitfires, and they're going to be flying this weekend for Warbirds Downunder. We've got a Mark 8, and it's painted up in the markings of RAAF 457 Squadron, which flew in defence of Australia, in Darwin, in the top end of Australia. And then we've also got a Mark 16, which is painted in RAAF 453 Squadron markings, and that aircraft actually served with the RAAF during World War II in the European theatre. This weekend we're really excited and fortunate to have a couple of pilots visiting that are going to be flying with us and flying the Spitfire, and that's Nigel Lamb and Matt Hall.
My name's Matt Hall. I'm here at the Temora Aviation Museum for this weekend's massive Warbird Airshow, Warbirds Downunder. And the aircraft behind me here, the Mark 16 Spitfire. I recently did a conversion onto this aircraft, and I've just arrived back here today to do some more flying in this plane.
Go too far forward, midway between the 3-point and level attitude, and then just hold that attitude and let it fly off.
I'm very excited about it because it's a fantastic aircraft, a massive history in Spitfires in general. You know, Battle of Britain 75 years ago, but this particular aircraft as well flew with the RAAF, and you know, fantastic plane. Can't wait to get my mitts back on it again and go flying with Nigel.
Well, this Mark 8 was built in 1944, delivered over to the Australian Air Force in 45. Made the colour scheme grey nurse, made famous by Wing Commander Bobby Gibbs, who was a fighter ace from the Australian Air Force. I guess that's the link why this one was painted in these colours, because it's so iconic in Australian history.
Nigel and I, we've known each other now for quite a number of years. As I was being introduced to the air race in 2007 and 8, he was a bit of a mentor and someone I'd go to for information of how to get myself involved in the air race. And then since I started racing in 2009, we've been peers in the Red Bull air race.
I started flying Spitfires over in England in 1993, and which coincidentally is around about the same time that I got to know David Lowy when he was training and working up to being the Australian Unlimited Aerobatic Champion. Fairly shortly after David acquired a grey nurse, I was invited over and ended up flying her then, and was also involved in flying the 16 initially for me in 2004, and then again 2006, and then shortly after that the 16 came over here. So I've been very privileged to fly both the 8 and the 16 here at Temora. I was born on a farm, a pretty remote farm in the Eastern Highlands of Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. My father emigrated after the war and went farming, so the closest I was to an airfield was probably, I don't know, 70 miles. Never saw any airplanes, but our house was full of books, full of all the Second World War, Reach for the Sky, all the Battle of Britain books. I read those avidly and always dreamt of being able to fly, and very luckily I was accepted by the Rhodesian Air Force to fly as soon as I left school.
So I started flying at a very young age with my father, who's also a pilot, after his father. And from growing up as a teenager, flying in all these aircraft, getting my rating in gliders, ultralights, hang gliders, and getting my restricted pilot's license, all while I was a teenager, the natural course from there was to be a professional pilot. I chose the Air Force and graduated 18 months later with my wings and went straight onto the F-18. And then flew basically for my whole career on the F-18. I resigned after 18 years of service as a wing commander to pick up a full-time role as a Red Bull Air Race pilot and part-time display pilot around Australia and internationally as well.
I was on the airshow circuit all through the 80s and came across lots of Warbirds that were operating in those times. Not as many as there were later on, but they were still pretty prolific. And I most especially ended up having a friendship with the Hanna family, who operated the old flying machine company out of the Imperial War Museum at Duxford. So in 1993 I had the first chance to fly a Spitfire, and then from 94 all through the rest of the 90s and up until today I've been very lucky to fly Spitfires and airshows pretty often through the summer months.
I first came to Temora in 2005. I'd been in America flying F-15s for 3 years and had just arrived back in Australia, and I found an accountant who knew aviation, Tom Moon, and he suggested, hey, come on out to Temora and have a look at one of our weekends. So my wife and I just dropped by one weekend, and that was my first time here in Temora. And then my grandmother found out that I was attending Temora, and she mentioned to me that my grandfather had learned to fly here in a Tiger Moth during World War II. And all of a sudden the place had more significance to me. So previously I'd visit here, and like any airfield, there's pictures on the wall of the airfield developing over time. And like any airfield, you look at the pictures to have, oh wow, look at the planes that were there and look at the lineups. And I used to look at the pictures of Temora, but all of a sudden I would look at the pictures and think, I wonder if my granddad is actually somewhere in that picture in a building. He's in the depth of the picture. It's nice to think of it that way. Every time I fly one of these planes, I land and I'm quite worn out. The controls are heavy. You have to have a lot of concentration looking at the engine instruments, making sure the engine's running correctly. There's noisy, it's vibrating, it's hot. You land, you're exhausted, and then you have a realization. You realize that young men in their 19, 20, 21-year-olds were doing 4-hour missions up in freezing conditions, getting shot at, not knowing if they were coming home. And it just puts things in perspective, that you go, wow, these guys really were heroes to go out there on a daily basis and put themselves through those conditions to defend the world against what was the threat at that time.
The reason I love flying a Spitfire is very simple, because when I was a little boy I loved the look, the sound, the smell, and everything that was all about the Spitfire. And actually my father flew them during the Second World War and ended up a test pilot at Castle Bromwich 1944-45. So it's very, very meaningful for me to be able to fly these airplanes. But really it's not really the handling that you love, it's the history, it's the smell, the look, the feel, the sound, everything.
There is an emotional connection there. My grandfather was a pilot in World War II, so I have that connection. And we're privileged enough that we own a 2-seat Mustang, and I get to take people flying in that, and quite often the person in the back seat has a connection with World War II as well. And will land and they'll have tears in their eyes and they'll be saying, that's what Granddad did. And it's absolutely amazing.
I've been lucky enough to fly the 5, the 8, the 9, 11 and the 16. Which Spitfire do I like the best? The one I'm flying at the time.
Boomerang, you're cleared taxi for takeoff. Trainers, 1-8 is black at the moment. You're cleared takeoff 2-3, remain low. And and Stearman. As soon as you're in position, you are cleared for takeoff, cleared for display.
Now this next demonstration is by the Boeing Stearman. The Boeing Stearman, or known as the Cadet, is produced as basically the equivalent of the de Havilland Tiger Moth. Now it is said by people who have flown both, this particular aircraft was used by the Canadians, in the United States, the US Army Air Corps and the US Navy, and it is said that people who flew the Tiger Moth and the Stearman say that the Stearman flies like an airplane and the Tiger Moth flies like a tiger moth. Even though they're designed for the same thing, the design philosophy was so much different. The American design is very robust and rugged. It is basically over-designed. It is still a wood and fabric aeroplane. It has a steel tube fuselage frame, wooden formers, stringers, fabric over the top. The R670, a radial engine where the cylinders are arranged radially around the crankcase, 670 for the number of cubic inches. Aircraft didn't have a massive speed. It has a maximum speed of about 117 knots and a range of about 490 nautical miles. Coming in now from your left, the CAC Boomerang. Now this particular aircraft is an Australian indigenously designed fighter, and it is the only Australian designed and manufactured fighter that has ever seen operational service. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, we had no fighters, and there were basically no fighters in Australia. So we had to come up with something very, very quickly. Lawrence Wackett put a proposal forward for a fighter designed around components that were readily available in Australia. These incorporated parts of the Wirraway aircraft that were obviously strengthened, together with the biggest aircraft engine that was being manufactured in Australia, the Pratt & Whitney R1830 radial engine. Now, Lawrence Wackett and Fred David, he was an Austrian Jewish refugee. He had been designing aircraft. He'd worked for Heinkel in Germany and had been seconded to Mitsubishi and Aichi as well. So he saw fighter design and bomber design and was able to put a huge amount of input into this aircraft. The centre section was narrowed and strengthened. New outer wings were manufactured, fitted with 20mm cannon and 303 machine guns. They were principally Army cooperation, but these aircraft were renowned for target marking, spotting, calling in the fighter bombers and artillery.
Copy, Boomerang.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the CT4 and the Winjeel trainer formation. Now this basically showcases trainer aircraft that were operated by the RAAF. The Winjeel, the big radial fixed gear aircraft, was replaced by the CT4.
Stand by to break. Break. Trainers, line astern, go. Rolling out. Trainers, echelon left, go.
As with the Harvard, a lot of these aircraft are currently being used to train up pilots to the more high performance aeroplanes, using pretty much the philosophy that was used by the US Army Air Corps. All of these aircraft are privately owned and maintained, apart from the two that have come up from the RAAF Museum as part of their heritage flight down there. And all of them trained privately, which is quite an achievement. They've got an excellent formation display team.
A really rare aircraft in our collection is the Lockheed Hudson. And you know, there was nearly 3,000 Hudsons that were built, and this is the only one that's still flying anywhere in the world.
I'm Stephen Death. I'm here at Temora. I'm the display pilot for the Lockheed Hudson that we're currently sitting inside. This aeroplane's been based here at Temora for nearly 10 years now. It actually started life back in the late 30s. Then it went on through World War II. And after the war, it was used by East-West Airlines and Adastra Aerial Surveys. At that time, it was demilitarised with the removal of the turret, the removal of the bomb bay door actuating systems, and various other military systems which were no longer required for the civilian role that it has. The only Hudson left in the world that's flying. There are quite a few static aeroplanes in museums around the world, but this is the only flying Hudson in the world. So it's great to be able to display it here for the veterans that flew these aeroplanes and for their families who remember the veterans. The bomb bay doors on this aeroplane have required an enormous amount of work to make them operational again. Thankfully, we have a really good team of engineers here who operate behind the scenes. They're probably rarely seen by the public, and they have done a great job sourcing all the equipment for it, installing the equipment, modifying the aircraft back to its original configuration, and they have put many hundreds of hours into this job, probably thousands of hours.
Yeah, I'm the chief engineer here at Temora, and it's our job to look after the aeroplanes. So that takes in a wide variety of jobs, from just moving them and cleaning them through to engine overhaul, annual inspections, defect rectification. Yeah, we've been thrown around the idea of getting the bomb doors operational for probably the last three years, and the museum made the decision that yes, they wanted to do it. So unfortunately, a lot of the parts have been lost over the years, and we're trying to find them all and piece it all back together. We're quite lucky in that we do have a lot of the original blueprints and drawings, so we do have good information to go from, but it's still presenting its fair share of challenges. The things you take for granted, like stainless steel cable ends on the actuation cables, you think they're just an end, but unfortunately, they've been superseded and are no longer available in a lot of cases, so we have to get them machined and swaged. So little things like that are presenting a fair time challenge to us. We hope to get the bomb bay doors operational, so during displays we can open them up and show off the aeroplane as it would have been during World War II, but also just on the ground. When you see it with the bomb bays all sealed up, it just looks like any other Lockheed 10, Lockheed 12, but when you see it with the bomb bays open, you actually go, oh, there you go, it really was a bomber. All right, so in this area here we've got the hydraulic services bay. We were very lucky in that we searched the world for probably about 6 months trying to find the correct type of hydraulic valve, the original hydraulic valve for the bomb doors. And a valve was located in Gisborne in New Zealand. The whole system really from start to finish has had to be re-engineered, even through to the selector in the cockpit, the knob on top of the lever. All that was all gone, so it's a big job.
We test flew that airplane, test flew the bomb bay door system, and did all the check flights on Remembrance Day, and that's really quite special. It's quite a mark of achievement to be able to do that on such a significant day.
And interestingly, we found on the ground they take about 12 seconds to open and close with the engines running. In the air they're back to probably 4 seconds for opening and closing, and we found that's because the actual undercarriage legs, which are also hydraulically operated, they sink down a little bit when we select the bomb bay doors open, and that causes the bomb bay doors to open quicker. So you've got a single control wheel, power levers. The right hand seat was generally for a co-pilot, a passenger or a navigator. The aeroplane is fairly straightforward laid out. We've got rudder pedals on the floor, you've got your control wheel, all your flight instruments, engine instruments, and further engine instruments across to the right. And down here we have our bomb door hydraulic lever, which opens and closes our bomb doors. Yeah, we're flying, I think only Saturday in this aeroplane. We'll be doing display, and it's basically a handling display. The aeroplane's not an aerobatic aeroplane, although it probably in World War II was used to its full capacity. So we basically fly it within a speed limit of 180 knots as a max speed. We keep our G loadings under about 2 to 2.5 Gs as a maximum, basically to keep the aeroplane flying for as long as possible.
Over 2,500 of these aircraft were produced during the Second World War. There are approximately 6 left. This is the only airworthy example in the world, so it's a truly rare machine. Originally designed to fulfill a requirement for a bomber for the British Air Purchasing Commission went to America and said, can you build bombers for us? Lockheed made a mock-up of its Lockheed 14 civilian airliner, showed where the bomb bay doors could be, showed where a turret could go, and they were actually bought off the drawing board. They actually went on to serve with 11 RAAF squadrons as well, used throughout the RAF and also employed by the Royal New Zealand Air Force. It was a Hudson of No. 1 Squadron that actually spotted the Japanese invasion fleet before their landing at Kota Baru off the Malayan coast. And one of those Hudsons attacked that formation a couple of hours before Pearl Harbor. You can see the bomb bay doors open on that aircraft, ladies and gentlemen. That is the first time that this has been publicly displayed. The guys here at the museum, under Andy Bishop, have spent considerable amount of time working the aircraft up, manufacturing parts so that that bomb bay doors could be opened. The large high-wing monoplane there is a Stinson Reliant. It was actually built first flew in 1933 and produced up to 1941.
Catalina taxi. Copy that.
It's a 4 or 5 seat passenger, cargo or light utility aircraft. The second aircraft, a Globe Swift. Now, ladies and gentlemen, coming in from your right, very, very slowly, as it does, the consolidated Catalina, the Black Cat. Brought up today from HARS at Albion Park, flown by Gordon Glynn and Warren Gengos. This is a beautifully restored example of what was the mainstay of patrol around Australia's coastline and also mine laying and attack up in the northern areas.
Temora Bird Dog Trojan formation entering and taxiing runway 36 for Alpha.
This is another HARS aircraft, the de Havilland Caribou. Now, this was the very last piston engine aircraft operated by the RAAF. Operated Caribous up in Vietnam and were affectionately known as Wallaby Airlines up there because that was the call sign that they used. The three aircraft in front of you now are what has been called the most powerful aircraft to have ever operated anywhere. It's the Cessna Bird Dog. It could be fitted with air-to-ground rockets, only 4 of them in the early models, 8 in the later models. The North American T-28, of course used as an advanced trainer. A lot of them operated out of a place called Corpus Christi in Texas, and some were later taken over by the US Air Force as well.
T-51, 30 seconds.
Of course, the Spitfire really needs no introduction. First flying in 1936 and going into service firstly with number 19 Squadron at Duxford in 1938. Together with the Hurricane, fought valiantly during the Battle of Britain to defend the UK skies. Two of the most legendary aircraft to emerge from the Second World War. The Supermarine Spitfire and the North American Mustang. Spitfire flown by Nigel Lamb, the Mustang flown by Matt Hall, and brought down from Caboolture, where it's owned by a syndicate.
America 180 at 10 knots.
Flyers copy. This will be last pass for a pitch of landing runway 18.
Stand by to brake.
Now coming in from your left,
brake.
The last of the trainer formations, the Wirraway, the CAC Wirraway with the white leading edges and white tail, the BT-13 in the middle with the fixed undercarriage, and the North American Harvard. The lead aircraft, the BT-13 with that yellow engine cowling, it's a heavy intermediate training aeroplane. This aircraft is the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation Wirraway. This was the first aircraft that was actually mass produced as a modern aircraft in Australia. Believe it or not, both the Wirraway and the Harvard have a common ancestor, because the Harvard Mark I was virtually a Wirraway with fabric sides.
Well, we're really fortunate to have a Corsair joining us this weekend, and it arrived here yesterday and in grand splendor. And you know, it's such a beautiful aircraft, such an iconic aircraft. It's not very well known in Australia because it wasn't operated by the RAAF during World War II, but certainly in the South Pacific, you know, it was one of the key aircraft that helped to defend Australia and defend the Pacific during World War II.
My name's Graham Hosking. I've had a passion for aviation ever since I was a very small boy. My father was in the Air Force during the Second World War, and I'm sure that's where that was the catalyst to start the interest. Some years ago, I bought a Navajo with some friends out from Africa, and that led to a trip up and through the islands of Vanuatu, and I managed to see some crashed American P-40 Kittyhawks in the jungle in Vanuatu on an island of Erromongo. To cut a long story short, we ended up owning those two aircraft. One of them's in the hands of Judy Pay now and it's fully restored. The second aircraft, the Royal New Zealand Air Force wanted it and offered it in exchange for the Corsair. Aircraft came into the New Zealand Air Force's possession by a weird exchange arrangement also. The Air Force in New Zealand had helped Walt Disney Corporation produce a film in one of their Pacific islands, and as a thank you gift, the Walt Disney Corporation gave this Corsair unrestored to them, but it was the wrong model for their museum's use. So they were desperate to get a P-40 Kittyhawk, which is the same model as we had in Australia, so we swapped. When I first exchanged it, I thought it was going to be a very simple exercise, a matter of taking it apart, refurbishing all the parts, putting it together. But when we actually got into it, there was massive quantities of hydraulic rams and all sorts of electrical, hydraulic, pneumatic equipment all missing. And over the next 17 years, we did numerous trips to America, England, all over the place, chasing spare parts. I'm sure I wouldn't have had the stamina to continue on with it, either financially or just the heartache associated with trying to make all these things come together, if it hadn't been for the fact that I was enjoying meeting people, travelling the world, collecting parts, doing all that sort of stuff. The journey itself of restoring it was a trip in itself.
My name is Peter Clements and I'm the Corsair display pilot this weekend here at Temora. The aircraft parked behind me is the Corsair, built by Vought, the F4-5, built as a night fighter. This was a late build one in 45, 46. However, the Corsair really made its mark post-Pearl Harbor as the mainstay fighter to fight all the way through from Hawaii, through the chain, through Guadalcanal, through the Solomon Islands, Iwo Jima, all the way back to Japan. This was the main fighter of its day. It was built for carrier flying. However, it went out there on jury-rig carriers. They were freighters with a wooden deck, so they could only take off, they couldn't land back on. So once they committed for their first takeoff in the Pacific, they were committed to landing on the islands, and that's where they stayed, fighting from island to island all the way through the rest of the war. If you look at it, it's a gorilla, it's a handful, but it also is a beautifully coordinated. Its control authority is magnificent. You can't get in, well, you can get into trouble, but you know, if you know what you're doing, you can't. It was a wonderful, wonderful fighter. The aircraft's been flying for just over a year now, and it's the first time we've had it here at Temora, and it's a great privilege, especially after it's had 17 years of restoration. One of the first challenges you have flying a Corsair is getting in. You'll see what I mean. You have to push here, a little ladder drops down, then you have to be nimble. It's very high off the ground, as I said, about twice as high as the P-51. But once you do get in the aircraft, it is very, very comfortable. Control harmony in the aircraft is beautiful. Lovely ailerons, left and right, for rolling. Elevator, very, very authoritative. The reason the wings are raised is because it was initially built as a carrier-based aircraft, and the wings coming up means that you can stack more aircraft on the deck or under the deck and get maximum amount of aircraft on one carrier. One of the features of the Corsair is this incredibly large prop. Being 2,400 horsepower, it needed a huge propeller to absorb the power. On the initial design, one of the problems they had was that they didn't have enough clearance between the prop and the ground, and they kept scraping. So what was designed into it was this gull wing shape, which has been the defining shape, I think, for the Corsair. And the gull wing shape lifted the propeller by about 1.5 feet off the ground, raised the nose, and that fixed the problem of the scraping propellers. Armament-wise, the aircraft had the 250 calibre machine guns on both wings, and as a ground attack aircraft, it was formidable, it was destructive. As a fighter in the air, these guns were perfect as well. On top of that, for ground attack, which is where it made its history, that through the islands of the Pacific during the Second World War, it really became a ground attack aircraft. It carried bombs under the centre line of the aircraft and under hard points of the wings as well.
The Vought Corsair, the bent wing bird. This particular aircraft is an F-4U-5. It's one of the late production aircraft. However, it is representative of all of those many thousands that were produced in World War II. Over 12,570 of these aircraft were manufactured in total. And it is the longest production of any US piston engine fighter, going from June 42 right up to 1953. Also became the first US fighter aircraft to exceed 400 miles an hour. First production aircraft flew in 1942, and it was much faster than the Hellcat. Very prominent in the Pacific campaign, and later went on to fly with the US Marines in Korea and the US Navy. Guy Bordelin became what they call the triple treat ace, flying an F-4U-5, virtually the same as this but fitted with radar. Now this particular aircraft is painted up in the markings of the Honduran Air Force. And this is actually one of the aircraft that was involved with the Honduran Air Force in what was known as the Soccer War, or the 100-hour war. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a look to your left, you can see the Grumman Avenger and the Vought Corsair. We call this the Pacific formation because the Corsair and Avenger, together with the Hellcat, formed the backbone of the United States Navy and Marine Corps operations right the way across the Pacific.
Airbus copies, Avenger, surface winds 180 and 7.
Ladies and gentlemen, from your right, the fighter formation. P-40, Spitfire, Mustang and Corsair. This fighter formation is representative not only of the Royal Air Force, the United States Army Air Corps, United States Army Air Force, but also the US Navy and Marines. You have to admit that is a really beautiful sight. And this is certainly a first for Temora, and certainly a first for Warbirds Downunder. Jeff Trappett is flying in the CA-27 Sabre. This aircraft is his machine. He had it rebuilt and had a great hand in all the workmanship on it. Rebuilt down in Victoria and flown up here for us today. It's currently the only Sabre that CA-27 Sabre flying in Australia.
So since the museum started, our focus has been on preserving history, Australian military history, and to maintain aircraft in flying condition. And you know, the way it's turned out, a lot of our aircraft are ex-RAAF aircraft, and you know, throughout the years, that's developed into a really special relationship with the Air Force. And we're very fortunate that the Air Force, you know, we go to some of their events and support them with historic aircraft. And we're very fortunate that they've been able to bring some aircraft to the museum and support us this weekend.
First flight of the Globemaster 3 was in September 1991. The aircraft is powered by four 40,400 pound thrust Pratt & Whitney turbofan engines. The aircraft is capable of landing on semi-prepared strips at 3,500 feet long, so it is an exceptional aeroplane with a great performance, and it can operate in some very, very rugged conditions.
Airbus C-17 departed this time, climbing flight levels for Griffith, direct west. Good day.
Hey, Wedgetail 1-3, you are cleared in. The airfield is yours for display. Roulettes cleared takeoff, low departure south.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the Roulettes.
my name's Adam Grinier. I am a pilot with the Australian Air Force flying F-18s. I'm currently an instructor at 2 OCU, which is our training unit. I love the job, I guess, as a whole. So obviously flying is in a machine like that is pretty incredible. The stuff that we get to do in that is really good, and also just the people you get to work with. So I get to work with the best trained people and the most motivated people, I guess, in the country, and learn a lot, and also with the best equipment, I find. So it's just a great all-round job, really. The aircraft I fly is the F-18, the 2-engine fighter. We've got quite a bit of thrust down the back, particularly in the configuration we got at the moment. So with no external stores on, quite powerful. So up around the 1-to-1 thrust to weight ratio, so it gets up off the ground and up to height and speed quite quickly. The F-18 is a multi-role fighter, so does both air to air and air to surface, and a variety of roles within those there. So we can go out, fight our way into a contested area, shoot down whatever enemy aircraft are in the way, go through, drop our bombs on our target, and then fight our way back out to get home safely. I enjoy a lot about flying it, really. It's overall just purely flying. It's a really nice, comfortable, smooth aeroplane to fly, and then once you start pulling back on the stick or pushing up on the throttles, it really turns into a sports car. So you can throw it around, and you can be as harsh as you want with it, and it's not going to break, and it'll just keep turning and keep pushing you into the seats. So you can go from flying around a nice Sunday afternoon flight into going around the racetrack. So it's a great aircraft to fly. Well, obviously, yeah, there's a lot of history here. It goes back to World War II sort of times, and you can see a lot of that here at the show with the aircraft that we've got here. So it's great to bring the modern fighter jet in with all the history and the Warbirds that are getting around. So yeah, it's quite exciting. So from the time you first take off in front of a big crowd, it's a bit nervous at the start, but once I get into the display, I'm concentrating fairly hard on what I'm doing, so I don't take too much of that in. And then once you get back on the ground, it's great seeing all the people that enjoy seeing the jet up close and manoeuvring as hard as it can. So it's pretty rewarding once you get back on the ground. It's great to be in Temora this weekend with all the history. It's my first time here personally, but heard a lot about it and seen Warbirds that are flying is great. It's a great experience to be here.
The relationship is building. It's a fantastic museum. It's run by fantastic people. The people that are here full time and the volunteers alike. You know, David Lowy putting his heart and soul into the project as well. And I can't think of a better organisation in aviation to be involved in.
I love this place because I came here when there was no museum, way back over 20 years ago. So I've been able to see how it's developed, and actually it's brilliant. It's such a beautifully laid out museum that it can compete, in my opinion, with museums all over the world.
If there's something in Australia's history that's currently in Australia and flies, it's here.
It's great to be here with getting to see, particularly flying, all of the Warbirds and large amount of aircraft and great, really nice, well-maintained aircraft flying around.
It's all down to the fact that we have some really good engineers that are really passionate about maintaining these aircraft for our veterans.
The airfield and the facilities are here for one purpose, and that is to house these amazing planes, and to be able to visit Temora and not only see aircraft sitting on the ground in a hangar all polished up looking great, but on a regular basis these aircraft roll out and take flight. I think it's a very special thing here, and Temora Aviation and the people of Temora have made this happen.